welcome to my tens or possibly dozens of listeners. Um, I'm joined again by Professor Eric Ginsberg. Today we're gonna discuss a little more in depth about DoubleLip embouchure and perhaps random rabbit trails, but mostly DoubleLip. So thanks again for taking the time. I
No
know
problem.
we're did you start the school year yet? I know it's
Next
around
week.
that time.
Next week.
Okay.
Next Monday. So we have meetings starting tomorrow.
All right. Okay. This if you don't mind my asking, how's the studio looking for this coming year?
Not too bad. I have two incoming graduate students who are former students, Brian Drews and Morgan Miller. They're coming back, and I have an additional freshman, so I think I have about 9 or 10.
Okay, that's good.
Not what I'd like, but it's not too bad.
We have kind of a clarinet-centric audience, so some people may already know what we're talking about, but
sure.
For the sake of anyone maybe new to the topic, would you like to start with some like a general description of DoubleLip?
Sure. I think people probably think of it in different ways. The way I think of it is that's playing the clarinet with your top lip under your top teeth is basically what it is. And then it gets a little more complicated after that, but that's basically what it is. It's just both lips, one clarinet, two lips. And they cover the teeth. Lips you shouldn't have too much flesh under your teeth. And you should have a bit of firmness to your embouchure so that you can support the sound. And then you have to kind of figure it out from there as you play things and see what it can help you do better, what you may have to work a little harder to do. It's not as, right off the bat, as solid an embouchure as SingleLip might be, which is what's good about it. You don't jam your teeth into the top of the mouthpiece. Mm-hmm. I started playing when I was in school because I heard several players who just blew me away. The first was Louis Kahuzak. And then I heard Harold Wright, and I heard recordings of his teacher, Ralph McLean. And that just, to me, was the way I wanted to play. So I started doing it, and then I started experimenting with it. I'd asked my father if he thought it was any better. He couldn't tell the difference. But I certainly liked the way it felt. And so I studied with Kalman Opperman, and he basically taught me how to do it.
Great. So, and this is one of the reasons I found my way to you for grad work. So it's an outlook I share on the technique. Right. One that I still, I'm experiment with sharing it with my students. I tend to deal mostly with newer,
right,
younger students. I have found some people start it naturally, because I guess the way clarinet embouchure is taught at some schools, it's just they focus on the pressure part, but they don't always give the specific details of what goes where. Mm-hmm. I have one girl in my studio now. I was meaning to introduce it to her because she was already sounding really nice coming in. Mm-hmm. And then when I described it to her, it's like, oh, I'm already doing that. So I took a closer look. Like, okay, well, let's
right.
But yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of different outlooks on it from, this is this is my ideal of how to play to I use it sometimes as a remedial technique, or to some people just outright think it's incorrect. My experience, of course, is I liked it. It worked for me, so I sought it out.
Right.
There's a lot of directions we can go. Let's say for people coming into your studio who may not have spent a lot of double lip time, what's kind of your process to introduce them to it?
It varies. If students are having problems with their embouchures, they're doing a lot of biting or pinching, or they playing like that, too much lip in their mouth. I have them try it a little bit. They are always kind of suspicious of new things. Right. I mean, I wasn't. I was happy to try it and try something different, and said, "Oh, cool! This is interesting." But they tend to be a little suspicious of it. But most of them really like it. They like the sound they get. It's kind of hard to pinch when you're playing double lip. It's possible, but it's less likely to happen. So I just introduce it very slowly. And then this is something that I didn't do, but I was advised to do it by Cal Opperman. He said, just go slowly, only play in the low register. Did I do that? No. And so I played in a lot of pain because my muscles weren't quite developed, but I liked what I was doing. It made things, I thought, sound better. I didn't actually make the full-time switch to it for about maybe a year. I would go back and forth, and then I finally made the switch, and I wasn't doing it on E flat clarinet, and then I finally played it on E flat clarinet too.
How old were you when you made that switch? Because when I was first introduced to all of this, I was, I think, in my early 20s, like just barely 20, 21. And I can lend some of my youthful hot-headedness to jumping in the deep end kind of similarly.
Oh yeah. I think I was 21.
Okay.
20 or 21. Maybe around there. I think I was 20 when I started experimenting, and I think my first lesson happened with Opperman when I was 21.
All right. Yeah. So
I was going to Juilliard at the time, so I was having my regular lessons with Stanley Drucker, and I would take these lessons with Cal Opperman. And at first it was a little weird because I couldn't play my lessons with Drucker double lip because I always played standing up, and I didn't, right off the bat with double lip, because your muscles aren't used to supporting the mouthpiece in the clarinet tends to wobble around in your mouth. And part of the process of learning to play double lip was learning to relax my fingers so that I wasn't knocking it around inside my embouchure. Mm-hmm. And that necessitated the loss of some technique. And so what I would do is I would practice all the stuff I was going to play in the lesson double lip, but then I would come in and play it single lip.
Okay.
And that really wasn't such a bad thing. I think it helped my single lip playing a lot. And then I eventually didn't have those lessons anymore, so I just played double lip all the time. But I was always sitting down. I have to mention that, and I was sometimes using my knees, which you can't see on the camera, but I was using my knees to support it. But when I started teaching and having to deal with playing recitals on a regular basis, I had to figure out what to do. And a big inspiration for me was Richard Stoltzman, because he plays double lip. And he plays standing up. He plays concertos, orchestras, he has anyway, all over the world. And he does it double lip. So I said, if he can do it, I can find a way to do at least what I'm doing somehow. And so I basically started practicing standing up all the time and gravitated to equipment that was going to make it easier to play. I mean, I was still playing on the Opperman mouthpieces and all that, but I tried to adjust the reeds so that I wouldn't have to strain as much. Generally, I think when you play standing up, you're going to use a lighter reed than if you sit down. But I'm not sure if that's really true for everybody. I think it's true for me.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess that's the thing. You need to find what works for you and how.
Right.
But I know my journey developing that, same deal. I mean, even now I still tend to favor sitting for most of my playing. I've had some discussions. I don't know about arguments, but let's say lively discussions about standard practice for solos and standing versus sitting.
Right.
So I mean there's some of those concepts to work around, but I think for the sake of maintaining your sound concept, you make the choices you're going to make. I think eventually, like when I went for my performer certificate, I just brought a stool with me. It seemed like a good visual height compromise for people who had a problem not standing up. But yeah, and certainly in orchestral playing, you're sitting anyways. Barring any Sousa stuff where the sections get featured. So I mean, let me maybe you can elaborate on this. I think a lot of the corrective things we've hinted at just come from the initial discomfort of having to employ your upper lip in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me that was a big deal because, I mean, if you're, let's say, heavy-handed, that instrument just starts bouncing around in your mouth, and once it hits that sensitive upper lip, for me, it forced me to find a more refined way of using my hands,
Right.
And
I would add that when I started doing that, it involved having my clarinet adjusted so that the keys are a lot lighter.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. I take that for granted now because it's been a while since we've started all that, but I've had techs in the area kind of question me or double check, because they're afraid that I'm just going to blow a key open with some, how light some of this stuff is. Well, I mean, for one, I would be proud of being able to produce that much wind, but also I guess that has me wonder about the hand technique of other players, because I just get frustrated now if I have to really squeeze an instrument. I don't know. There's a lot there for me, but yeah,
I used to talk to Opperman about that. I mean, he would very often say that, the A key is too heavy, the A key is too heavy. And I would say, well, yeah, the repairman said it might blow open. And he said it's not possible. As hard, he's what he said, no matter how hard you're blowing, there's not going to be enough air after it gets through the mouthpiece to blow a key open. Now, I suppose if there were no spring at all, and he wasn't talking about having no tension, but he was definitely in favor of light action and quick action, light and quick, which is very hard to get. And so I think I've had this conversation with as many repairmen, I'm sure, as you have, that they don't quite think, because you're rare, because most people want it a little heavier, because it's more secure that way. Certain keys, like the lower joint keys, if you have a heavy pad, you have to use a heavy pinky, and then you'll ensure that the pad's going to close. But if it's really light, it might not be sealing completely, and you're not using brute force to create the seal.
So, I mean, I feel like that's important to touch on, because for people maybe experimenting with this embouchure, maybe they might not think that it goes beyond here into the whole rest of the instrument or the playing experience.
Yeah, definitely.
So, that's good. Now,
eight keys and register keys, particularly, I think. And left hand is a tricky hand in our technique, and when I pick up a student's horn or somebody else's horn, and I'm trying horns, and it's heavy, it just slows me down. It's almost like hitting a speed bump.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are important moments to evaluate what's going on. So,
yeah.
Now, maybe we can elaborate a little more about. So, people who play double lip tend to like the sound more. Like, what is it that's happening that creates that particular sound quality? Like, what is it mechanically that might be changing inside your anatomy there?
I think your oral cavity, the inside of your mouth, opens up when you have that little extra bit of flesh under your teeth. So you're getting a more resonant space inside your mouth. I think it also favors keeping your corners forward, so that you're getting what Cal would call the ooh in your sound. You can really hear it in, if you listen to recordings of McLean or Harold Wright, and if they're playing an open G, it's a tough note to sound good on. They have the most beautiful open Gs. So I think that's primarily what it does. One thing that Cal said to me a lot was that you can play really well. A person could play really well single lip, but it's less flexible. So on double lip, you can play like this, or like this. You can put a lot of mouthpiece in your mouth if you need to, or you can play with less mouthpiece. You can futz around that way with what your lips are doing. But in single lip, he says it doesn't work so well.
You get kind of locked into a particular specific position.
I think there's like maybe fewer sweet spots in how it's all put together. I mean, there are wonderful single lip players in the world, and I'm sure they all play differently in a way, but it may be, I haven't examined this, they may be that they're all sort of going in the same direction. I'm not that certain. I haven't studied with anybody who plays double lip except for Cal. So I'm not sure if there are any other opinions about this. Yeah. But I also know he studied it pretty extensively.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're out there. More of us. It feels weird talking like there's some alien race.
I know,
but I know who else was it? Morales, right? Ricardo Morales.
Ricardo.
Doesn't he play double lip as well?
I think he may play on and off.
Because I mean,
I saw a video he made, and he recommends it.
Yeah, because I remember that, and I feel like I've heard other players kind of hint at that. But
Kanye plays double lip. Kanye in the Chicago Symphony.
Yeah, so they're out there. I don't know. I still feel like it's considered kind of a fringe technique, or I don't know. I mean, I think the perspective I've heard from a lot of players also comes from their the type of playing they grew up doing. Like I can't imagine trying to do double lip just marching in a marching band for most of your high school career. So
Yeah,
but then I tend to hear some of that technique coming into other types of playing, like, if somebody has to sit down in an orchestra or try their hand at chamber playing, like that, the way you're used to setting yourself kind of, I feel like it bleeds into these other modes of playing.
yeah,
But I don't know. I mean, other than marching, I've felt pretty comfortable taking my double lip to all sorts of other types of playing. I've
yeah,
done world, or was it Middle Eastern music for and it's certainly there's a lot of, you're employing a lot of flexibility, sometimes bending tones quite
yeah,
drastically.
yeah.
And who was it? Um, was another one of the another one of the Opperman students I met early on. The
Joel Rubin.
klezmer.
Joel
Rubin,
Rubin.
yes. Is
He's
he
a double
still
lipper.
dedicated? Like, he's double lip when he did all his stuff.
Yeah, and he still does it. And I just happened to have an email correspondence with him recently. He's living in Switzerland now.
Oh well.
Yeah, yeah. I think when the COVID business started, and he just said, "I'm getting out of here," and
That's fair.
and he was able to do it. So I think he'd been preparing for a few years. Anyway, um, he is a wonderful klezmer player, but he was talking about Opperman's staccato exercises and some of these things, and he exchanged some of them with me, and I sent some of things to him, and so he's still doing the basic stuff, the basic stuff which allows you to then do anything else you need to do.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I that's something I've enjoyed about all of these things, is they're repeatable, and I can always go back. It's like a diagnostic for all the elements in my playing.
yeah,
It was, let's see, back to double lip a bit. I've had a lot of talks with different colleagues over the years who've experimented with it, and some people bring up kind of their anatomy, like certain amount of lip or configuration of their lips or jaws. Is there anything you want to touch on, as far, because I'm sure you've had any number of different faces show up in the studio.
well, you remember, David Ravelick, and he always claimed, and I think I had some correspondence with him last year, and he claimed that his lip is just not long enough to get over his top teeth.
Mm.
And interestingly, there was an article that I read recently that was written by Ralph McLean in some clarinet magazine back in the 40s or something like that, advocating double lip. And he did mention that there are some people whose lips just aren't long enough to get over the teeth. And but David was the only one I've ever met who had that issue.
Mm.
I'm sure there are others, but
So they're out there.
yeah. So there might be that there are some people just do not have a long enough flesh here to get over your teeth, or their teeth are long. And so you have to just sort of apply the principles of double lip with your teeth on top of the mouthpiece. And I think if you do, if you put your teeth on, I hate to do this because I don't want to make any marks on my mouthpiece,
Right.
but if you put your teeth on and then you pull your lip down, opening up your oral cavity, your teeth actually come away from the mouthpiece. So I think it's possible to employ the principles of the double lip and still do it with single lip. And sometimes I'll demonstrate in a lesson for somebody, and it works. It doesn't. I always feel like I'm going to mar my mouthpiece, but
Well, I mean, If you can go grab a roll of electrical tape if you want. Just
Right.
give yourself little
Yeah.
practice markers.
And I think actually that's what, when people put the patches on their mouthpieces, it functions in a similar way, that it does open up their mouths more.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense because it's physically like a physical bumper to create space.
Yeah.
I actually have, I've been in the habit of putting a pad on top of my mouthpiece. I think a lot of that for me though was just traction, because the tops, the mouthpieces get all polished, and then depending on, like, I don't have a terribly grabby lip, so when I would set, I found, like, if it was just a bare mouthpiece, unless it was one of the really old rubber ones that were already kind of porous, like the newer ones, like if I played on a new manufactured Van Doren, or back in the day, the polished up Zinner blank type mouthpieces, they would just, because if whenever you're pushing in, they would just keep pushing in, and so I felt like I needed a little bit of rubber to just kind of keep me set where I wanted to set. But I know I liked it. I liked it a lot more compared to my middle school and high school days, where I just wear big pits into the top of my mouthpiece with my teeth.
Right.
We talked a little bit about setting the keys to adapt to the technique. Is there anything else like that, like any extension of clarinet playing to consider if you're really diving into double lip? And you also mentioned possibly reed strength, depending on.
I think for a beginner it would be good to have a lighter strength. If you were using a 3.5, I would go to a 3 and just get used to making the embouchure, depending on mouthpiece and all that stuff.
Is there a type of, since we mentioned mouthpieces, is there any type particular like reed strength or facing or anything that you think might lend itself better, or is it just kind of you plug in the technique to whatever you might have?
I only have anecdotes about this. I think that I have this mouthpiece here. This is this old mellophone. I think I showed this mouthpiece. Can you see it? There we go. Mm-hmm. To you once upon a time. And so it's like what they call an old Shedville. And I've been playing on these mouthpieces by Ramon Wadkowski. I think I mentioned that the last time we spoke. Mm-hmm. So like this is after playing on Opperman's mouthpieces for such a long time, I just thought I'd go in a different direction, see if I could find what he was doing from another maker, since he was no longer alive, unfortunately. And I know that in my early years studying with Cal, he made a facing called the B facing, which was B for Buddy Wright. And it was supposedly basically his measurements. I'm not sure. I've never measured a mouthpiece myself, so I don't know exactly how closely it adhered to his measurements. But so those mouthpieces were pretty close, and I guess long, and very easy to play. And I played on those, and I still have one somewhere. I think this is it, that I used for many years. And I just put it on the other day just to see, and gosh, it felt great. And then Cal had told me that when Ralph McLean moved from New York to Philadelphia, and he was playing in a big orchestra, he had to change mouthpieces because he just needed to put out more sound or have more presence in his sound or whatever it was. He felt he couldn't do it on what he was playing on. And I know that in general, clarinetists sometimes use different sometimes I use different mouthpieces for orchestral playing versus chamber music playing. If you know, in my perfect world, you should be able to play in an orchestra like you play in chamber music. You should be able to, but very often you can't. And so either you adjust your reed to be able to put out a little more sound, project a little more, and it's relative to the kind of hall you're in. So I think once you develop the skills to play double lip, you can then adjust to whatever mouthpiece you think is going to meet your needs, solve your problems.
Right.
So it's been funny not really playing in very many orchestral concerts this last year, because that was a really great opportunity to see what worked in a bigger hall with more people on a stage and to figure out my equipment. Right, I'm always thinking about the reeds I'm using and whether it's going to work with the other people around me, whether it will even tune the other people around me. So there's just so much working with a tuner will do for you. And hopefully there'll be some concerts this year. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we don't know.
We just had a summer outdoor concert a few weeks back with West Suburban. It was according to the records, it was our highest attended outdoor summer concert in the group's history.
Wow.
So it
That's
shows
wonderful.
I feel like it shows people want to attend these things. Like whether the circumstances will permit it, we have to see, but at least over here we're planning tentatively to have a regular season again. But again, we'll see.
Yeah. I know that this past year I did chamber music and a couple of recitals, but didn't really have any orchestral services. This year Peoria is planning a full season, and I'm not sure what's happening with Galesburg because they have issues with the Orpheum Theater because it's very small, and it wouldn't be possible to have people spaced apart and still even come close to meeting their expenses. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. They might try some different venues, but I think there's some opportunities for some concerts this year. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it has. This is always the elephant in the room whenever we talk about performing, because inevitably we have to discuss how you can pull it off, given the circumstances.
Right.
I've talked to a lot of, I think virtually all of my past guests now since I started doing this. We've come up with some little bits here and there of how to deal with the circumstances. One I saw recently, was it? So there's an online venue they called the Stage It. They I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's kind of it's an online video type performance portal, but they run it like a concert. Like you still pay your admission fee, and it's only aired. It's only aired on the platform when it's scheduled to air, as opposed to just posting stuff for free on YouTube or live what do you call it, live streaming on one of the platforms.
Right.
It's actually kind of a paid portal. So I mean, people are reaching for their solutions, and it seems like one that makes sense, especially if people are really attached to the concert going experience. You get most of that, except with the distance that you might feel uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to our topic. I mean, it's hard to avoid the other discussing the other topic, but
I know
that's the world we're in right now. Now as far as playing in different settings, does it prefer a certain setting, or can it be adjusted to different settings?
I think it can be adjusted for different settings. I think what it does in all settings is give you the flexibility to blend better. So I feel I have pretty good control over timbre. If I need to be a little brighter to project, I can do that. If it, even if it's just for a measure, I can adjust to get a little more zing in the sound. That's a word Cal used all the time, zing. Or if you need to, blend in and disappear a little bit, you can do that too. I would say, it used to be this thing that when you play double lip, it requires more work, just because you have to keep your endurance up. But I feel like no matter which way you play, you need to be practicing a lot.
Yeah.
If you think that you can play single lip and get away with not practicing, you're not gonna be able to do much in your life as a clarinetist. If you think that it's easier, so there's really no easy way to play the clarinet, and I think you have to practice either way. One of the things that, because of the stability issue, one of the things I work on a lot is playing in the altissimo, and also leaps into the altissimo, so that when there's a change of register, you're not moving your embouchure. So the immobile Rock of Gibraltar type of embouchure is important for single and double lip. But because of the instability of that second lip, you can tend to want to do stuff that you shouldn't do. And so I've always worked on that. Always worked on playing intervals from like the left hand second register notes up until the altissimo, things like that, just to figure out and develop the strength and sensitivity to do it well. It's easy to be flat if your chops are loose up there. So working with a tuner is really helpful. It's tough, but it's also tough on single lip.
Right. Yeah. No, if you want to play well, you have to chase that dragon a little bit.
Yeah. There's no easy way to do it. You can invest in equipment that's better, that makes your life a little easier, but it doesn't mean you can practice less.
Right. I mean, I'm reminded of Bao. For our listeners, my friend and our mutual colleague now. I guess he would be our colleague, but we were both in the studio together at the same time. But he came in just playing these kind of wrecked hand-me-down instruments. I remember the rings on his clarinet were caved in from the acid in his hands. He had played it to such an extent, but he was even back then just a monster player. He didn't. I don't recall him ever complaining about the condition of his equipment. He just would play.
Right. He didn't make any excuses for himself that way. And if he had a problem, he said, "Must work harder. Must work harder." That was his mantra.
Let's see. Now you mentioned some of your personal practice, getting, working that embouchure with the altissimo intervals. Are there any general types of exercises you might recommend for people starting to explore double lip?
Yeah. I think for starters, just play some long tones. You can start anywhere. Sometimes I start on first line E and go down. And one thing about long tones that I know this ends up being a discussion about Cal Opperman, but he never really called the things that he assigned long tones, and he used to call them long drones. So he was sort of suspicious, or he was careful. So all of his staccato exercises, I believe, are long tone exercises. So they're long tones with staccato. And what I learned from that was that when you do a long tone, you just can't just sit on the note. You actually have to try to play it one note musically. So for just a one note, one whole note, do it with hairpin, do it with a crescendo. A little bit of a gentle crescendo and decrescendo. And then go down. And just to get used to, for your very first double lip notes, I would do that. And that leads itself very nicely to these intervals that he'd like to do. Did that come through?
Most of it.
Okay.
I'll play around. I'll play around with the editing, but
Yeah.
What was expanding chromatic, right?
Yeah, it's expanding chromatic from E. He called them pivots. So you're pivoting on E, half step, then whole step, etc. And then the ones that you're jumping down are harder. And I still work on just trying to keep my jaw in place rather than if I do like I'm tempted to do, the note won't come out because you're basically choking off the reed. So you have to keep your chin out to the note.
Yeah. I mean, and then we, with exercises like that, you start getting into the concept of, connection or the space between the notes, that kind of thing. And I don't know that that's specific to double lip. Like, I mean, beautiful connection is important regardless, but
I think it's universal.
But I feel
he was
like
big on chromatic scale. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No worries. I feel like doing those exercises with double lip makes you extremely conscious of that connection. I remember doing things like that, single lip, like my earlier days, just playing, whatever intervals. And I think we mentioned it earlier, you kind of get in that one specific set. So it would, things like that, if I ran into difficulty, either try to force it out or it just wouldn't happen. I think for me with double lip, it gave me that extra elbow room to kind of allow stuff out instead of forcing something out. But yeah, I think, I don't know, for me, that the double lip helped me draw the right attention to it, to be able to shape connection instead of just kind of go,
Right. Yeah.
I'm bringing this up because I know this was a big issue for me. I guess it still is. Tonguing in relation to double lip. I think it's forced me to try to be more efficient with what's happening in there. Is there anything you might want to mention about tonguing compared to double lip, or in connection to double lip?
In double lip, it feels like there's more room in your mouth, and so I think that's a help right off the bat. I don't think double lip necessarily makes people better tonguers, but I think it may provide you, if you put the work in on staccato, maybe better success. But I don't have any data for that. I know that it was a big part of Cal's teaching is very, very intense work on staccato. To him, that's what separated the wheat from the chaff. The players from the amateurs was just people can tongue and be able to tongue the repertoire that it's required in. Mm-hmm. And he said he always felt you should practice at least 2 hours a day just staccato, in your multi-hour practice session that he advocated. But you know, I mean, I practice staccato every day. It's usually, if I don't have a lot of time, I'll at least do the staccato.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It doesn't get any easier. But I don't know. I think there are some really amazing staccatoers out there, and many of them are SingleLip players. But Harold Wright had a fantastic staccato.
Now,
so I think
I want to, since we're on that, I want to bring up that when we're talking staccato, we're not talking purely just the speed of the separation of notes, correct? There's more. I feel like there's more to it.
Yeah, it's staccato very often ends up being just a catchword for, can I tongue fast enough? But staccato is part of our expression. And it's how we shape, it's how we start notes, it's how we end notes. And it's part of the variety we can put into the music we play. And I would say, as far as that aspect of it goes, I really find DoubleLip easier for that. I'm not sure that it's easier for brute speed that we sometimes need, but it's just for me. I think I'm a better articulator.
Yeah, I agree. At least in my experience, I've found that all the type of work we've put in to staccato like has helped me shape my entrances a lot better, because you know, setting the tongue and like all that time setting the tongue and coming away from the reed, it makes you, for me, I feel hyper aware of every time you start to produce sound, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes the semantics of that, you know, staccato versus just articulation, the word articulation, you know, I mean, we talked about already, like speed versus shape or attention. But I mean, also all my experience with any of these opperman exercises is there's so many layers to what you're practicing. It's never just staccato. It's always something else connected to that.
Right.
Yeah, I feel great about you know, my entrances, even though a lot of the practice is just like tongue, you know.
Yeah.
It seems fast and repetitive, but really in those moments of stillness is where it starts to really shine.
Well put. That's a nice way to describe it.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot of, you know, kind of the benefits and what you can expect to experience trying DoubleLip, if you're new to it. And we mentioned a couple players already, but is there anyone else that comes to mind you might refer people to? Like, you know, Harold Wright is a big one, you know, Richard Stoltzman. Are there any other players that you know of that are dedicated DoubleLip that maybe people can help form their concept of sound?
Yeah, I don't know. Steve Hartman. I think I've spoken to you of him in the past.
Mm-hmm.
He's I went to school with him, and we studied with Cal together, and he's one of my oldest friends.
Yeah.
And I think he is one of the greatest players. But he's the principal clarinet of the New York City Ballet and the City Opera.
Yeah. I did play for him once, passing through there.
Oh, you did?
I can't remember. It might have been something like, you know, when I went to see Cal myself, and he happened to be able to carve out time to see me too.
Oh, okay.
Both very educational and psychologically terrifying. But yeah, I mean, that's how a lot of important learning experiences can be. You got to
Well,
shake yourself up a bit.
yeah. Steve is very, very talented guy. But he works really hard. And I just think he has a beautiful style of playing. He's got a really lovely articulation and enough technique to play anything. And a very smart guy and a great musician. So to hear him play, you'd have to either get access to some city opera or city ballet, more recent performances. I'm not sure where you would find those, if they're even available.
So or they archive that kind of stuff, or
yeah, I don't know. I have a couple of CDs that he made a long time ago of some chamber music and some Crusel concertos, but anyway, he is he's a really great clarinetist. And I saw him a couple of years ago, and we spent 3 hours just practicing together. And
nice.
it was just the kind of thing we used to do all the time. And one of Opperman's big focuses was the chromatic scale, and basically most of his staccato exercises are based off of playing chromatic scale, playing it slurred, playing it tongue, playing with different articulations, and that's what we did. We worked on playing chromatic scales, and then we would test ourselves on Midsummer Night's Dream. So it's it was intense.
Yeah.
So that's what if people don't know John Ye's playing, I think he's a fabulous player, and he plays double lip. I don't know if there are other double lip players other than that. I mean, there's not like a double lip society. I don't know. I think there are a lot of players who admire Harold Wright. There's a website on Facebook, or it's a site on Facebook dedicated to the great players of the wind players of the 20th century. And it's a lot of Ralph McLean, a lot of Harold Wright, a lot of Marcellus. But the people who love that site, I'm not sure if they play double lip or not. I mean, it's, in a way, it's not that important, but it's just the way I decided to go to get to play that style.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for anyone who's new to the topic or new to the technique, it's certainly worth a try. I know, like, for me, it felt groundbreaking. Like, I felt like I could finally, make the next step in what I wanted to achieve once somebody showed me that technique and how to really do it.
Yeah.
Actually, how to really do a lot of things, because looking back, I got precious little like useful clarinet teaching in years past.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really until I studied with you and the rest of the the venerable Opperman studio, I started really polishing technique in a useful way. But yeah, no, I mean, there may be somebody out there who just, once they try it, they'll discover that that's the way they need to go. But
Right.
this, I think this is a good initial resource for people, and if it's certainly, if you're open to the tens of dozens of people listening to this, who might seek you out, you're still at, for our listeners, you're still over at Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois. I just read that they're demoing some of the terrible slum houses that used to be out there.
Yes.
One of which
they're going to tear them down. I mean, they've done a few already over the years, and I think they've slated another 20 or so.
Okay. Yeah, I did my time in a house like that. I'm surprised I didn't see my old house on that list, to be honest.
I know, I didn't see it either. I was looking for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, for any listeners interested, I bit the bullet in a way, and I found the one bedroom freestanding house in Macomb. I think it was a terrible lopsided death trap.
Yeah.
But it let me practice at any and all hours without really bothering any apartment neighbors.
Right.
And that's, that's about as much as I could have hoped for. I know, I think at one point David had a similar house. Like he was just in a space where he could play and be to himself.
Yeah, I remember that place.
But yeah, disgusting, and I hope they demolish it eventually. But no, I mean, it had its value for at the time for what it was. So other than your contact with the studio and our kind of tenuous fall and whatever our constraints might be with the circumstances, is there anything else you want to announce or link people to with you and your work?
I'm in I think the third week of September. I'm playing two pieces on the electroacoustic music concert.
Okay.
The composers put on an electronic music concert every year, every September. So I'm going to be doing two pieces on that. In fact, one of them I already recorded. It's all quarter tones. It was really kind of wild. But it's a great piece called Darker Than Dark, but it has nothing to do with like a dark tone. It has to do with darkness of the soul, I think. But
Right.
It's hard, but it's anyway, I like it. I like the piece. I'll share it with you some point when I can figure out how to do that on my computer.
Right.
And then another piece by Dr. Caldwell. Remember Dr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Yeah, so he wrote a piece, and I'm going to be playing that. And then on the 29th of September, I'm doing a chamber music concert with our flutist, Suyan Ko. We're doing a trio by Paul Schoenfeld, and then I'm playing a trio with our new saxophone teacher, Charlie Chadwell, and we're doing a trio called Sound Blues Moves, or Sound Moves Blues, something like that.
We'll figure it out.
I can't find it. Anyway, it's by a composer named Robert Aldridge, and it's a very, very good piece. So that we're doing that. I'm not sure if they'll be streamed or not, but I'll let you know.
Yeah, I can always add that to the show notes whenever more details come up.
Mm-hmm.
But at least that's some playing coming up for the fall that we know of.
Yeah.
And then the various orchestras whenever they know what's going on and how. But tell us again who you play with during
Peoria Symphony and Galesburg Symphony.
Peoria and Galesburg.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you feel like you want to add regarding DoubleLip?
I think everybody should try it for sure, and go slowly, and just try it and think about fundamental things: how you start a note, how you move your fingers. Just think about how you interact with the clarinet, and try doing a double lip. You may decide not to do it, but I think it will give you a new perspective on everything else you've been doing.
Great. Well, I mean,
so
it's
educational.
Certainly what it did for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put your info in the show notes. I appreciate you jumping on again.
Sure. We should do some duets sometime.
A handful of people who are listening, I'm sure appreciate it. But this is going out to more platforms now. I know the video will be up on YouTube, but we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and several big podcast platforms now. So
I got a nice note after our last one from Andrew Simon, who plays in Hong Kong. And he has a show with interviews with a lot of players. But he studied with the same teacher I had in high school, Ben Armato.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of fun. So I know that people are seeing it around the world.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
that'll give me a little shot in the arm to keep doing these. But
Yeah, you should. It's
um,
wonderful.
yeah, well, thank you again for your time.
You bet.
I'm glad we were able to share this with people. I'll harass you again at some point. Maybe we can. I know we were talking about playing together a while back, but schedules aren't always friendly. We'll figure that out. Hopefully.
Excellent. I'd love to do that.
So, but thanks again.
Okay, take care.
I'll see you
Thanks for
soon.
asking me.